Welcome back to Munchausen's Proxy, and this is the quick and dirty review for our episodes 10 and 11. Now, I know this is late, but I had tech issues last week, and so I didn't get around to doing the reviews last week. So we combined them this week just in time for the last episode of the season to premiere this week. When last we left the Ark, we had a mutiny failed by Garnet breaking free and taking back over. He goes to weld the shuttle hatch, and Garnet announces a lockdown to the crew and an imminent boarding by Ark 15. I guess while going to his lockdown station, Angus comes across the place where they have the prisoners and winds up prisoner himself because Kelly still has a thing for him. And so she has Trust, she has Lieutenant Asshole, she has Mrs. Trust, all prisoner, and now she has Angus as well. Now, she lets Ark 15 know she's got them, and while she's getting them ready to leave, she only wants Trust and Angus at this point, and she's taking Lieutenant Lane as well. But while she's doing that, they're trying to convince her to allow Kat to take Mrs. Trust to get the gunshot wound taken care of, and she's not interested at all in getting Mrs. Trust any kind of help. Then we come to Bryce trying to get Ava to hurry up in her welding of the shuttle hatch, but the boarders have lasers that slice through her welds like they were butter, and they all clear out of the compartment. Well, these guys get on board, and they're wearing body armor and have weapons. So Garnet tries to get them to give her some kind of indication as to what they want. And basically all they do is point guns at her, so her and Bryce duck down, and she basically just spaces them. She depressurizes that compartment and blows all of them but the one that was left in the shuttle out into space. Unfortunately for Ark 1, Ark 15 had dropped a guy in an EVA suit out on their way over. And he comes aboard and he immediately starts going to find Kelly. He finds her, and she apparently knows him and likes him because she gives him a nice smile. By this point, it's obvious she is a complete psychopath, and we find out later exactly how psycho she is. But they take Lieutenant Asshole, Trust, and Angus, and Lieutenant Asshole leads them to the DNA vault because they want to stop over in Trust's hibernation chamber before they hit the shuttle. The guy who came aboard in the EVA suit goes into the vault, finds what he wants, and they head out. But as they're going, they figure out that Garnet had spaced their shuttle and all of its crew. And so they decide to take the Ark 1 shuttle with Lieutenant Asshole piloting. They head out, but not before Felix intercepts them, fights the guy who came aboard, kills him, and Kelly's about to whack him in return when Angus stops her because she actually seems to have genuine feelings for him, even if they are of the psychopath variety. So she doesn't kill Felix for him, and they all head out. While all this is going on, Kat is watching Mrs. Trust die. And as she's dying, she tells Kat that she's been her best friend and that she knows she was in love with her husband, but she was a good friend and never acted on it. And what she wants from Kat as she's dying is for Kat to take care of her husband when she goes. And then she up and dies. And this just absolutely mind Kat to no end. And she's pretty much a mess for the rest of the episode. Back on the bridge, the crew pretty much know as soon as the shuttle is clear, Ark 15 will fire on Ark 1. So Arc 1 recharges the Yugoslavian republics, whereas Kelly looks like she just got off the boat from Ireland. Now, her father is Jonathan Glasner, and Glasner can also be a Germanic name, but either way, mom and daughter don't look anything alike, and one of these days, Hollywood's going to figure out that genetics are a thing. Anyway, she starts berating Kelly for leaving the dude who got killed behind, because apparently what he was carrying was more important than her daughter, William Trust, or anybody else in the entire universe. We find out why later on. It doesn't rotate fast enough for all sides of the planet to see the sun. Therefore, one half of Angus, by the way, has been taken to some other quarters because Kelly has the hots for him. And so Teen pulled on them. And Garnet is doing an EVA to break into Arc 15. Maddox orders the DNA tested, and as soon as it's confirmed, Arc 1 destroyed. And that's how they ended the 10th episode of the Arc. The 11th episode starts out with Garnet going through the computers looking for a way to disable the weapon and any other interesting information they might need in the future. While that's happening, Alicia and Doc have used the spider DNA that they did not actually send to Arc 15 to grow the spiders, because they need the venom for the cure for Bryce. While that's going on, Angus is doing a 180 and cozying up to Kelly to try to get on her good side, and that earns her an invitation to dinner with Mom. While Garnet is wandering around Arc 15, and she stumbles on Arc 15's spider lab and learns that they basically have been trying every spider venom known to man, and apparently the only one that works is the Mediterranean spider they have. And so while she's in there, she looks around for the other two ingredients that the Arc 15 scientists have been using to try and cobble together a cure for clampkins. She eventually finds them and the dose and sends that back to Doc and Alicia for them to mess around with that. Maddox, meanwhile, has decided she's not waiting for Trust to come to his senses and decide to help her start up the Proxima B colony, and has a torturer go into the brig and break Trust's fingers. Well, one finger. When her and her goons leave to let him think about it, Lane grabs his finger and straightens it out and is basically like, now I know what a god complex looks like in stereo. She then goes to dinner with Angus and Kelly, and she is straight up stone cold ruthless because she is just tearing the crap out of her daughter. And Angus tries to convince Maddox that he is now with Arc 15. But she warns him that Kelly's quote-unquote friends don't fare well in the past, which kind of hints that she basically likes to play with her food, and her food doesn't exactly survive the experience. While she is eating, the red alert shipwide goes out because they have stumbled on the fact that Garnet is actually on the Arc 15. And while she's accusing Angus of being part of some plot, despite the fact that something she decided not to tell Kelly. And then we go to Garnet, who is frantically trying to find the prisoners while the red alert goes on, and she finally finds Lieutenant Asshole and Trust, but is taken prisoner herself. And while she's in there, she basically tells the other two idiots that she didn't come for them. She came for Angus. Where the hell is he? Back on Arc 1, Bryce is arguing with Felix and Ava about what to do now that Garnet has gone silent. And while he's arguing with them, he collapses. The doc and Alicia come running, and they basically say it is a symptom of Clampkins, and he wakes up after a minute or two. They take him down to medbay, and he appoints Felix acting captain after him if something happens, while Doc and Alicia mix up a cure. Later on, he makes up with Ava, and they do a little suckface before other things happen. Back on Arc 15, Angus convinces Kelly to let him talk to Trust to convince him to help Maddox, playing on her mommy issues and telling her that if she gets Trust to help them, then her mom will be so proud of her. And of course, because she's an idiotic psychopath, she falls for it. But she warns him ahead of time that if he betrays her, she will kill him, which basically makes him completely terrified of her. Back in the medbay on Arc 1, Bryce is basically trying to convince Doc and Alicia to just give him the cure. Don't worry about testing it and taking the 3 days that she says that process will take. Just give him the damn cure. So they give him the cure, and after a couple of seconds, he has a heart attack and goes into a coma. Eventually, Felix convinces Doc it wasn't her fault, and then takes Ava back to the bridge because they need to figure out what they're going to do now. Back on Arc 15, Kelly takes Angus' episode was we lost one of the two really bad actresses in this show. A psychopath, so she could wind up whacking mommy in the first place. So that was a really interesting aspect of this episode. But overall, this is building up to a really nice season finale. And we got good news last week on the 12th of April that Season 2 has been confirmed by Syfy. I think this show is good enough, the writing is good enough, the acting is good enough that it probably deserves a bigger audience than it is getting. I'm hoping with a Season 2 that they might do better with some of the scripts and some of the acting, because it did take a few episodes for some of these actors to settle into their characters. I'm thinking of Alicia, I'm thinking of Lieutenant Asshole, and so it should be interesting to see what they have in store for a Season 2 and how much change and how many new characters they might bring in. Eventually, they're going to have to start talking about the population of humanity left in the universe, especially vis-a-vis other settlements like Ross 128, as well as the humans stuck on the various arcs that are still in existence, specifically Arc 1 and Arc 15. Eventually, they're going to have to start making babies on these ships, otherwise humanity is just going to disappear via attrition. And other than a throwaway line that was used as a sort of excuse for why William Trust was showing up at Kat's door, it really hasn't been talked about. It's one of the things that should be an aspect of any kind of forced colonization sci-fi show, where the inhabitants of Earth absolutely must get the hell off the planet. Well, any scenario where that's the case, you kind of immediately need to start reproducing. Enough people have died on the Arc 1 where space is not going to be an issue. There's a lot of space on that ship where they could have the Rugrats running around, at least until they figure something out as far as where they're going and what they're going to do when they get there. So I really hope that Season 2 starts sort of including that into the storyline. and maybe getting Kat a little more involved in that, because she's the one that threw that line out. So I have to assume Trust actually did have her working on that. And eventually they need to incorporate that into the overall story. It can't just be, hey, we're going to this planet. Oops, we can't go to that planet anymore, so we're going to go to this planet. And oops, we got to stay away from the ARC-15 because the ARC-15 is going to destroy us. Eventually, Maddox is going to have to realize there just aren't that many humans left. And you have to have a certain population to produce genetic drift, which will mean that you have the possibility of genetic diversity and the possibility, the resistance against species collapse due to genetic diseases, environmental diseases, and various other causes that might start chipping away at the human population, either on the planets they eventually go to or on the ships. So eventually that's going to have to be incorporated into this show, and after 11 episodes, we haven't really seen it talked about except for that one line. And it certainly wasn't talked about by anyone on the ARC-15. All they were interested in was the bloody spider DNA. And so it'll be interesting to see what season 2 brings, how they handle the writing, because the writing got better on this show as the season went on. And I think that's one of the reasons you saw a rebound in the ratings. And hopefully the improvement in the writing will continue. And hopefully we can keep any more relatives or friends or lovers or whatever other relations to the showrunners out of the damn show. Because really, Kelly, played by Jonathan Glasner's daughter, really was the worst thing on this show for this season. And we haven't even hit the finale, so we'll see what her role in the finale is. But I'm hoping no more relatives pop up in season 2. That's about all I have to say for these 2 episodes. I'll be back for episode 12, the finale, in a day or 2. Probably 3, depending on how editing and whatnot goes over the next 2 days. And we also have Gotham Knights between when I get Arc 12 out and now. So that's all for now. If you like what I do here, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, share the video, comment down below, and I really appreciate it all. Until then, tschüss.